All right, 99.9 Punk World Radio FM. You guys already know what time it is. And right here, we are back with episode 6 of Elite Wrestle Talk. And we're joined by a phenomenal young Canadian wrestling talent. This individual has done so much amazing things. He's got recognized by WWE Hall of Famer Kurt Angle. This individual has also been trained by Tyler Black, also known to the wrestling world as Seth Rollins, WWE's current World Heavyweight Champion. We got the phenomenal, the one and only, and this man is going to be a future WWE or AEW star. I said it to him before the broadcast, and I gotta say it now. You are looking at a rising talent. Keegan, how are you doing? How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing as good as I can be, man. It's definitely a pleasure to be in the ring, and it's just a pleasure to be happy and healthy.
And I gotta say, man, it's definitely a great time as well to be a wrestling fan as well, because you got so many amazing companies out there just to watch on TV, not even just mentioned like in this area. So many amazing independent promotions to go out with your friends and family just to watch, man. A lot of wrestling to absorb in 2023, man. Definitely a great time to be a wrestling fan.
Oh, man, without a doubt. And that's not just counting American wrestling. That's counting wrestling in Japan. That's counting Canadian wrestling. We have a lot of independents coming up right now, and I've had the fortunate pleasure of working quite a few of them thus far, and hopefully there's more to come. And you mentioned that there's like a smorgasbord for pro wrestling right now. There's a lot of great companies doing great things. WWE's on fire, AEW's doing good work. Impact is just getting even more prominent again now with the rebrand of TNA, so they're going to be probably the top company going into 2024 in terms of quality, and I'm really excited to see the future of wrestling and where it goes.
But I got to take you back to the beginning of your amazing professional wrestling career, and I got to ask, like, what actually inspired you to want to pursue a career within the wrestling industry originally? Like, what really sparked your passion for wrestling?
Well, I started watching it really young. I can't remember the exact show I started watching wrestling because I think it was that young into my infancy as a person that it seems like it's just always been there. But I was always infatuated with the ability to garner emotion out of something, the ability for somebody to control a story to the magnitude that they can control your emotions and make you feel. And I think the way I felt as a kid is what really made me want to do this. Because I remember how guys like Kurt Angle made me feel, guys like how The Undertaker made me feel, how Eddie Guerrero made me feel, guys like that. And I remember thinking, I wonder if I could capture those feelings in a bottle and live with those feelings for the rest of my life. Because if I felt that way for the rest of my life, I think I'd be the happiest person around, and I would really enjoy what I'm doing. So I would say probably from a really young age, I looked at pro wrestling as something that I always wanted to do. And there would be a lot of learning curves to come with it, and still that are coming with it because you never stop learning in wrestling. But that lightning, like I said, that lightning in a bottle feeling where I emotionally felt something I never know I could feel is what brought me to make the decision to get in the ring.
And when you mentioned Eddie Guerrero a few moments ago, honestly, still to today, my absolute favorite wrestler. If I had a gun to my head and someone says you have to choose one, Eddie Guerrero easily would be my first pick. And it's crazy just to know that earlier this month actually was 18 years since he passed away, man. It feels like yesterday you got to turn on SmackDown and sit in front of the TV as a youngin' and just see him going at it and cheating to win as he always used to do.
Yeah, Eddie is a once-in-existence performer. If you look at a wrestler that you would want to build from the ground up in terms of talent and in terms of consistency and in terms of relatability, you would build that wrestler like Eddie Guerrero. And one of the reasons, too, I think I resonated with Eddie was because he wasn't a tall guy. I'm not a tall guy. But Eddie had so much intensity, and he brought out so much emotion from a crowd that you couldn't help, whether you loved him or hated him, you couldn't help but respect him. And I remember watching a promo that he did with Brock Lesnar. It was on the go home show of No Way Out before he won the WWE Championship. And the aura that he had in terms of being real and authentic was something I looked at and I said, I have to do that. Like if I get in the ring at some point, I need to have that authenticity that Eddie had, because I heard how that crowd was reacting to how he was I can't even say portraying, because it was real. How he was talking to Brock and talking about how he had the fight to get his wife back. He had the fight to gain the respect of his kids back, and he had the fight to get the respect of everybody else back within wrestling. And that really spoke to me, because this guy was literally in the depths for real in real life, and came back and was at the absolute pinnacle of the industry. And he did that by being him. And that really inspired me to just be Keegan and to always be Keegan.
And also as well, you were actually trained by WWE's current World Heavyweight Champion, Seth Rollins. Also, I know him as Tyler Black because I grew up watching the Ring of Honor days, but love him as Seth Rollins as well. I was wondering, how did you actually first get connected with Seth? And of course, what was it like just being able to share the squared circle and actually, just be his and just train with him?
It was an honor and it was a pleasure to train with him. And if I didn't live so far, I would be at Black and Brave every single day. But how it really came to was it was in 2021, and I originally wanted to start wrestling the year before in 2020. By the time March hit, I was ready. I was getting ready to sign up, but eventually COVID hit. So I was already in motion to do it. So COVID really put a halt on that. And there wasn't a lot of wrestling schools that were open because of the pandemic. So it was just a product of the circumstance. So I thought about it in 2021. I was 19 going on 20. And I said, well, if I got to do this, I got to do this at a young age, and there needs to be like a now or never option. I didn't want to start when I was 30, because I think that would have been a really late in the game, or even 25. Like I really wanted to get a jump on it. And I saw that Black and Brave had open spots, but they were for 2023. And I figured in 2021, because the pandemic was still happening. I think this was probably in March. So the pandemic was still pretty prominent. I said, well, the pandemic should be over by 2023 anyway. And I feel like at that point, I would be mature enough as a person at 21 going on 22 to go train, and especially take the gamble on moving away for 3 months. So I wanted to do it to also better myself as a person. And that's how it came to be. But I mean, training with him was unreal, especially like the first day you get there and you see Seth Rollins walk in. That's a pretty big deal, especially for someone who has admired his work like I have. And I've watched him since the Ring of Honor days too. So to have him in front of me, and then eventually to be able to get in the ring with him and just try to do as good as I can, and have him constantly critiquing me and giving me pointers, was something, again, that a young person like me wouldn't have dreamt of 10 years ago when I was watching him debut on the main roster.
And I have to ask him, what was his training regimen like? Because obviously some trainers are laid back, they're really there to help you, and other trainers are like drill sergeants that will literally drill you until you puke and then make you do it all over again. Like, how was his training regimen? Like, what was Seth Rollins like as an actual trainer?
He was an amazing trainer because he wanted you to be at your best. And I know that sounds cliche, but it was a lot of cardio and a lot of precision and a lot of footwork and pacing and timing, which is really what every wrestler should be focused on. So the conditioning was CrossFit based, because we also did CrossFit on top of in-ring cardio. So we had a nice blend of being in the ring, practicing, whatever, doing, internationals and stuff like that to get our cardio up. But also we would work out before we got in the ring. So we would be doing an hour CrossFit session before we got in the ring and started taking bumps and doing rolls, and then getting slammed and just learning all the meat and potatoes of wrestling. He was very insightful with even how to bump and how to sell a certain spot and how to really accentuate your own personality and to believe in who you are, because he was always a firm believer in not playing a part, but being a part. Because if you're playing a part, which is what we don't do, we are who we are, then you're not believable. But if you really believe in what you do, then that's what can, hopefully take someone to the next level. So that was really a philosophy I think he had from day one when he told us, like, you got to be you because no one else can be you.
And also as well, you are actually an aspiring author where on July 8th of 2021, you actually published the 228-page book titled A Streak That Could Have Been the Exception. But I was wondering if you can actually tell us a bit more about this particular book. And of course, is it actually still out there to actually be purchased today in 2023?
Yeah, so that was an independent project I compiled together even outside of university because I wanted to see how my writing would be perceived. And I thought, well, if I'm going to write it on something, it needs to be something that's creative, something that's different, and something that I don't think has been done a lot before. So I wrote that for that reason. But also too, I wanted to try to give some insight into, the mind of someone else. And that's why I wrote like a retelling of the streak, where, maybe if we look back in retrospect, some of the opponents that the Undertaker could have had, and I wrote that solely as a fan, but that was also a couple of years ago. So now maybe my mindset's changed, but it's nice to look back and read it and see what I was thinking at that time. So I look at even writing that book as a positive learning experience since I am still in my final year of university in English literature and creative writing. And actually, it's funny because I've talked about that book to people in my program, and they thought it was unique that I took that gamble, even though it was on Amazon Publishing, to go for that extra mile and try to, again, do something that's a bit different and out of the literary realm. So I'm still proud of it though, but hopefully I can write more in the future.
And man, you definitely should be as well, whether it's Amazon or a big giant publishing company. At the end of the day, you still got a book. A lot of individuals, man, they write stories, but yet they never go to that extra mile to just throw it out there, right? Because just this day and age, man, people are harsh. They'll like rip you apart over something so small. So a lot of people don't make that leap, man. But you made that leap, and I gotta say, it definitely is a phenomenal piece of art, in my honest opinion.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that because yes, some things can be harsh, but I also think it's a good learning experience too to see, to see maybe where you went wrong or maybe what you could improve on, and then you can take that as a positive and just try to better yourself every single day, no matter what the criticism is.
And also as well, I know we spoke about this before we actually went live, but your name has also been brought up on the Kurt Angle show, where Kurt Angle and Paul Bromwell actually recognized you and gave you massive props for your craft within the professional wrestling industry. I was wondering, how does it feel to actually be recognized by the legendary Kurt Angle? And of course, like, how did that come to be for you? Because like obviously, like, it's like a video. Like, were you watching when they actually brought it up, or did someone call you up and be like, "Hey, Keegan, like Kurt Angle is talking about you right now"?
So I've watched the Kurt Angle show since day one, and I usually listen to it though, like when I'm driving or something, because I'm either doing schoolwork, trying to get my degree, obviously, or I'm going to a show, whether I'm wrestling or helping out or things in that nature. So I was driving on the 401 in Canada, and all of a sudden I put on the Kurt Angle show, and then I heard it on my radio. So that was a humble surprise. I was very excited because a lot of times I'll throw in a question, just if I'm curious about something that Kurt did in his career. And I believe I sent in a question for that show that day. And then Paul started talking about Fight with the Sick Not Weak, and then Kurt started talking about it too. And if it was truly an honor. I mean, for someone of Kurt's stature to kind of recognize somebody just trying to make it in wrestling and trying to even get booked on shows and trying to be the best person that they can possibly be is it's truly inspiring. And I know that word's thrown around a lot, but for me, when I heard that, I had a warm feeling inside, and hopefully I can keep working hard in the future, and hopefully I can keep growing and evolving, not just as a talent, but as a human being as well.
And also as well, I actually recently saw on your social media post about a bucket list of places where you actually want to end up wrestling. I was wondering, if aside from companies and promotions, what are some of the actual like individuals you would love to face off in the squared circle one on one? Like anybody you've ever wanted to wrestle?
Yeah, there's always a bunch. I like throwing companies out there just to see if there's ever going to be any opportunities, because I'm always a firm believer in helping out. I'm a firm believer if you're new and doing ring crew, that's all. I think everybody should be doing that. I think, even going there to ask to help out and just being there, I think shows a lot of character. And plus, also, I enjoy wrestling, so I like talking to new talent. I like talking to people I've never met before in wrestling. I enjoy that camaraderie, and so I always think it's a chance to grow. And those promotions that I threw out there are, maybe they might not happen today or tomorrow or the next year or maybe next 2 years, depending. But it's something that I just want to check off to say, you know what, like at least I can say that I had the opportunity to tour the independent circuit, which I love. The independents to me are amazing, and hopefully down the road I can check all those companies off. But to answer your question for matches that I want to have, there's obviously quite a few that I would love to have. Like Tomohiro Ishii, I think it is one I would definitely love to have, and I think that's probably the top one due to the fact that I've also looked up to him from an in-ring perspective, because he's about my height. I'm 5'8", so he's about 5'7", 5'8", and but he's a brick, and he wrestles a very intense style, very hard hitting. So he's not classified as a small guy, and he's not that misconception, because he can keep up intensity wise and physically with guys like a Kazuchika Okada, who's a legitimate 6'3", or guys that are just bigger, and he can be competitive, and you're not ever gonna think, oh, Tomohiro Ishii's too small. So I would say he would be the biggest match. In terms of others, I mean, saying Seth Rollins is the easy one, right? And that is the easy answer. But that, if that match ever occurs, that would be a tremendous honor. But I also think, again, it's an easy answer, but it would still be a pleasure. And then off the top of my head, I think working with somebody like a Zack Sabre Jr. would be definitely a test, but one that I think would help me grow. So I'd say down the road, that would be a big one too.
And one of the last cliche kind of questions, I call these cliche because they seem so generic, but I have to know, man. So far within your wrestling career, you have put on some stellar matches, man. I saw quite a few of them on YouTube, and such a talented individual, man. But who was actually one of your toughest opponents that you actually had the opportunity to share the ring with this far in your career?
That's a great question. I've had the pleasure so far in my short career of working with a lot of really good people that I've learned a lot from. I would say for my toughest opponent, I would have to go with Mr. Marvelous, James Runyon. He's somebody who personally I'm not a huge fan of. Like, if you're counting personality wise, like I think our styles completely clash. But for some reason in the ring, when we get in there together, it's magic. And again, he's somebody who he's like the CM Punk of Canada in a lot of ways. You either love him or you hate him, but he has this reputation in Canada and specifically Ontario that's, very, very difficult to navigate. And there's a lot of people that he's made enemies with. And I just happen to be one of them. And I try to be somebody who really admires everybody and shows everyone a lot of respect. And I do respect him as a talent, but somebody as a person, he leaves a lot to be desired. And but again, he pushes me to the limit. And anytime I get the chance to really make an example out of him, it means a lot to me. I'm already 2-0 against the guy.
And also as well, December 16th in Mississauga, you will be wrestling at GCW's Fight for the Sick. and not for the weak. I was wondering if you can actually tell us a bit more about this up-and-coming event, and of course, where can our listeners actually snag ourselves some last-minute tickets to come on out for a great night of hard-hitting action?
So you can get tickets at ccwpro6@gmail.com. They're still available. They will be available even on the day. There's also a donation slot too for those who would like to donate, and I will put that in the comments as well, and I'll keep tagging it. The donations are for mental health awareness and for Sick Not Weak, and the show is co-promoted by me. And we're hoping to bring some really good action in. I'm wrestling the aforementioned James Runyon on that show. And like I said, he's got a reputation. So me putting my name with his hopefully doesn't taint my own reputation. But at the same time, it's going to be really great to embarrass him in his own gym and to out wrestle the guy that calls himself the greatest technical wrestler in Canada, even though a guy like me who's just coming in is going to give him what he deserves. And that's what Ontario wants to do, and just beat the living hell out of him in every single solitary way. So it gives me a great honor that on my own show, I get to really humble somebody that needs to be humbled, and a guy who puts too much stock in his own hype and thinks that he runs all of Ontario, when in reality he's at the lowest pecking order and goes to the lowest hanging fruit to get anything that he tries to desire.
And also as well, because obviously I do know you were just getting into that, tell a little bit more about your opponent, but we do got viewers in here watching, and you never know, one of those could actually be your opponent. So with that being said, if your opponent is actually watching this live right now, or even on demand in a day or a couple hours from now, what do you want to say to your opponent come December 16th? Like, what can he expect from your in-ring performance? Because I got to say, I really think, Keegan, you're going to whoop his ass.
Well, it's really as simple as this. This is my show. This is a show that really means a lot to me. There's a lot of sentiment that goes into it because I'm affiliated with Sick Not Weak in the mental health community, and we're doing this for a good cause. But there's another cause that I really want to do, and that's, beat up James Runyon. And I don't mean just beat him up in terms of a wrestling match. Like, I really want to show him that he's not who he thinks he is. And that's the thing. It's like, you can have all the talent you want, but if you don't have the respect of your peers, and if you don't have the respect of everybody in that locker room, it's going to be really hard to make it in this industry. And even though I just started, when I see somebody who I know is, again, at the lowest pecking order, but really thinks they're at the pinnacle, it makes me feel good to have to knock somebody down a couple pegs. And his reputation just keeps going down and down and down. And I think he's almost at a lost cause unless if something drastic happens. So it's going to be really nice to be able to make him suffer that much more, because he deserves it. And I don't say that lightly either, because I always try to be, a lighthearted person. But, anytime you mention him, my mood changes. And it changes because I see a guy like James, a guy who can really help mentor this next generation, but really all he wants to do is bring guys like me down. And I'm not going to let that happen, especially on December 16th, because for me, with the whole mental health community on my side in Canada, it's really all on the line for me. And if I can't win, I'm going to die trying, because I don't want to give that guy the damn privilege of being able to say that he beat me on my own show, and also just to say that he beat me in general. I think that would be a drastic loss for me, and it's something I just can't, in my own conscience, let happen.
And also, Keegan, aside from this amazing up-and-coming December 16th show, what is next for yourself? Like, is there anything we happen to miss during this evening's interview? Anything else you do still want to touch on, talk about, or promote? And of course, is there actually any more up-and-coming wrestling events that will be starring yourself?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of really good companies around here in Ontario, and I actually have a date before the 16th on December 3rd for Sharp Wrestling. It's going to be their debut show, and I get to be in a singles match on the card. against a man by the name of Prince Ali. And then later on in January, I might be appearing for Hammerlock Wrestling again, which I appeared for November 4th and got to do a singles match. And that company, to me, I think has all the potential in the world. They're very focused on old school wrestling and just bringing back that technical aspect of it. And for me, that's right up my alley because technical wrestling is always something I've loved and it's always something I've wanted to improve on. And hopefully I can keep improving and keep trying to master this craft. And hopefully I get to keep wrestling there because they have a lot of really good performers. And when I've never been in that locker room before prior to November 4th. And when I walked in, it was the warmest welcome I've ever had in wrestling thus far. So hopefully that trend can continue, and hopefully in 2023 I can have a lot more. I know during the summer I have a numerous amount of dates with Classic Championship Wrestling. I don't know how many yet, but I know at least probably 14 as of what I know right now. So hopefully we can keep adding to that list, and I can just keep wrestling all the time and keep training, keep getting better, and keep doing this as Keegan.
And it sounds like those 14 dates, they got you booked for one hell of a phenomenal storyline. I can only imagine what that summer is going to look like for you, man.
Hopefully it's the summer of Keegan. I can only hope, and for certain talents that I legitimately don't like, I like the fact that I get to get in the ring with them and physically deal with those situations. So I'm just got to say, keep bringing them on and keep bringing on guys like James Runyon who really need to have their mouth shut and need to get their ass kicked for once in their life.
Just line them up and chin check them one by one.
I
don't like that commercial, that old Bud Light commercial. Line them up, the guy smacking everyone.
Line them up and knock them all down, and that's exactly what Keegan's going to do. And if I get knocked down, I'm just going to get back up. It doesn't matter where, it doesn't matter who, it doesn't matter how. I'm going to get back up every single time, and there's nobody that is in the ring with me or anybody even outside the ring can do about that, and that simply is that.
And Keegan, before we actually part ways here this evening, I have to ask, man, obviously I know how to follow you on social media, but for the individuals, whether they're promoters, fans, how do they actually go about connecting with you across all social media platforms that you are available on?
So my most prominent are Twitter and Instagram. I've started to recently build an Instagram over the last year. You can follow that at the Keegan RW. That is KeeganRW. You can also follow me on Twitter at the same tagline, the Keegan RW. You can add me on Facebook, which is my first and last name, Keegan Dimitrijevic, or if you type in Keegan D, then it'll probably pop up. You can follow me on, I don't use TikTok a lot. I'm trying to kind of get that going, but you can follow me on TikTok at Keegan RW. And you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel at Keegan RW as well. So, hopefully we can keep this ball rolling and hopefully keep just getting better and keep evolving, because that's what wrestling's all about.
And I got to say, first and foremost, Keegan, thank you so much for giving not only myself, but the radio station Airwaves a bit of your time, man. It was such an honor speaking with you, just learning about your history so far within the wrestling industry. And of course, man, like I said, I already know you're going to be a huge star. You already are a huge star, but you're going to keep growing and growing and growing. And one day I will see you on TV, man. So this is going to be my biggest flex, that I got to interview the man before he was famous, man. So thank you so much, man. And super stoked to see what's next for you, and hopefully down the line I can be able to come to one of the events and actually see you wrestle and perform, live in person.
Thank you, and your support is very much appreciated, and hopefully I can just keep working as hard as I am. And again, when you hear that support, it's extremely humbling. So once again, thank you, I appreciate it.
Hey, man, you're most certainly welcome. Definitely have yourself a phenomenal Wednesday night, and I'm pretty sure we definitely shall talk again soon. Thank you so much, Keegan. Have yourself a wonderful night.
Yeah, you as well.